What if Satoshi Nakamoto wasn't a person but a plan? What if the most mysterious figure in modern history never actually existed? What if Satoshi Nakamoto wasn't a man, but a mission? A plan so carefully designed that even discovering the truth could shake the foundations of power itself. We all know the story, or at least we think we do. A lone genius creates Bitcoin, releases it into the world, then vanishes without a trace. But what if that story was part of the plan? The idea of one brilliant mind creating digital money is inspiring, but it's also convenient. It gives people a face to focus on, a myth to admire. But real revolutions, the kind that shift civilization, are rarely born from one man. What if Satoshi was never meant to be found? Because Satoshi was never meant to be singular. What if Satoshi Nakamoto was the name given to a decentralized plan, one that could survive the destruction of any single participant? Think about it, the white paper, the code, the timing, the flawless anonymity. It all feels too deliberate, too orchestrated, as if every piece was placed not by chance, but by design. Maybe Bitcoin wasn't invented by a person at all. Maybe it was deployed by an idea that had been waiting, evolving, preparing for decades, hidden in plain sight. Let's go back. Before Bitcoin, the world was shifting. Governments printed endlessly. Banks collapsed. Trust eroded. People began questioning money itself. The system was showing cracks. And through those cracks, something ancient was reborn. Long before 2008, cypherpunks, digital rebels, dreamed of private money, cryptographic freedom, and separation of money from state. Names like Wei Dai, Hal Finney, Nick Szabo all contributed fragments. But what if those fragments were coordinated? What if Satoshi Nakamoto was the synthesis, a collective identity uniting decades of cryptographic evolution into one flawless delivery system? A plan so resilient that even if every contributor disappeared, the idea would live on. You see, people can be silenced, but plans can't. You can't arrest a concept. You can't censor an algorithm once it's distributed across millions of nodes. That's the beauty and the terror of something like Bitcoin. The code itself reads like scripture. Perfect balance, self-adjusting, unstoppable. No ego, no name, no authority. Just mathematics, truth, time. It behaves more like a law of nature than a human invention. Satoshi disappears in 2011, right after Bitcoin begins to stand on its own. That wasn't retreat, that was completion. The plan had executed flawlessly. The teacher leaves once the lesson begins. If Satoshi were one person, their silence would be human. But if Satoshi were a plan, the disappearance would be protocol, a necessary step to ensure Bitcoin would never have a master. Maybe Satoshi was created specifically to vanish, to force the world to interact with the code itself rather than worship the creator, to remove authority from the equation forever. And if that's true, it changes everything, because then Bitcoin wasn't born from genius. It was born from inevitability, the culmination of cryptography, economic collapse, and human longing for freedom, all colliding at one perfect moment. Imagine a plan set in motion decades ago, by thinkers who knew the state would never surrender control of money willingly. They didn't fight the system directly. They built something the system couldn't kill. A silent revolution, one that doesn't march, doesn't protest, doesn't demand permission, just code, spreading, replicating, reshaping the concept of value one block at a time. It's almost poetic, a plan so elegant that it uses the system's own weaknesses against itself. Central banks inflate, Bitcoin tightens, governments censor, Bitcoin roots around, tyranny thrives on control, Bitcoin thrives on chaos. That's not an accident, That's architecture. It's the digital equivalent of planting a tree that grows stronger every time someone tries to cut it down. Ask yourself this. How could one person have predicted every scenario, every attack vector, every countermeasure so flawlessly? Maybe they didn't have to. Maybe the plan was built collectively, refined by time, and released when the world was ready. The name Satoshi Nakamoto itself could be symbolic. Satoshi meaning clear thinking or quick-witted. Nakamoto translating loosely to central origin or within the foundation. Together, the wise one at the center of it all. A name not for a person, but for an idea. The idea that truth should live in code, not politics. That value should be governed by math, not men. That freedom should be cryptographic, not rhetorical. Think about how the message was delivered. Through a mailing list, not a stage. Through text, not charisma. Through logic, not persuasion. It's the communication style of a collective intelligence, not a single ego. And when the plan was complete, when the seed had been planted and the network could self-sustain, the voice disappeared. Because the message had become immortal. Satoshi didn't die. Satoshi decentralized. Maybe that was the point all along, to prove that an idea can live forever once it's released into the wild. That truth doesn't need an author, only believers. You can destroy a leader. You can silence a movement. But how do you stop a mathematical idea backed by millions of machines and billions of human desires for freedom? You don't. You can only watch it grow. And that's what terrifies governments and banks, because they're used to controlling people, not principles. Bitcoin isn't a rebellion you can crush. It's a law of nature you can't rewrite. Maybe that's why the identity of Satoshi must never be known, because once you give it a face, it becomes human, fallible, corruptible. But as long as it remains faceless, it stays perfect, pure, eternal. Bitcoin doesn't need a leader. The moment Satoshi left, it became truly leaderless, the first monetary organism in history that governs itself by consensus, not authority. That's the genius of the plan, to create something so decentralized that even its creator could disappear without consequence. It's the digital equivalent of fire. Once lit, it spreads. If that was the plan, then it's working. Bitcoin survived attacks, crashes, bans, ridicule, and still it grows stronger. That's not luck. That's resilience engineered into the blueprint. What if the real goal of Satoshi Nakamoto was never to be remembered, but to be replaced? To awaken millions of minds capable of continuing the mission in their own way. In that sense, you are part of the plan. Every node you run, every sat you save, every person you teach, you're extending the mission. You're keeping Satoshi alive by acting on the principles they encoded. Maybe that's why Bitcoin feels alive, because it's not a static invention. It's an evolving consciousness, powered by everyone who believes in it. A living organism made of code, energy, and conviction. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Satoshi meant all along. That freedom itself is the plan, and Bitcoin is just the code that allows it to exist. So, what if you stopped looking for Satoshi and started realizing you are Satoshi? Every person who chooses sovereignty, who stores value outside control, who believes in the math, becomes part of the blueprint. That's the secret most people miss. Satoshi's disappearance wasn't mystery. It was symmetry. The creation disappears, so the creation can't be corrupted. It's not a riddle to solve. It's a principle to live by. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The hum of miners, the ticking of blocks, the silent heartbeat of a plan still unfolding. Every 10 minutes, the plan continues. Another block, another line in the story, another chapter in the longest running experiment in human freedom. What began as code has become a mirror, showing us what humanity looks like when trust is no longer for sale, when truth is verified, not believed, when power is shared, not seized. And maybe that's why Satoshi can never return. Because if they did, the illusion would collapse. The plan would lose its mystery. And mystery is what keeps people searching, learning, building. Bitcoin's greatest strength is that no one is in charge. It's the first time in history an idea achieved escape velocity from its creators. That's not coincidence. That's destiny. So next time someone asks, "Who is Satoshi Nakamoto?" Smile. Because the answer isn't in a name or a photo or a clue on the blockchain. The answer is everywhere Bitcoin exists. Satoshi isn't missing. Satoshi multiplied. The plan worked. The code is alive. And it's rewriting the world one block at a time. So now the question isn't who created Bitcoin? It's what will you do with the freedom it gave you? Because every time you use it, every time you share it, you carry the torch further. That's the beauty of the plan. It doesn't end, it only evolves. It's not about who started it, it's about who continues it. And that means the story, this story, is far from over. If you've felt the truth in these words, if this hidden story made you see Bitcoin in a new light, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe. Because there's more beneath the surface than anyone dares to imagine. Stay curious, stay awake, and remember, Satoshi wasn't a person. Satoshi was a plan, and that plan is just getting started.